Hello there guys, how are you all doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So I'm definitely over a week late to this topic, but I wanted to discuss some of the fallout and aftermath of Nintendo's most recent Nintendo Direct, where they discuss some details about games like ARMS and Splatoon, a couple of surprise games for the Switch, which was pretty interesting to see, and then of course we all know they detailed a bunch of information about some 3DS games, which, other than the fact that Nintendo told us there was going to be 3DS games once they announced the Nintendo Direct, really did catch a lot of us off guard. I think that not a lot of people saw so much emphasis still coming for the 3DS in one of the first Nintendo Directs to happen post-launch of their brand new console, the Nintendo Switch. It was something that I was mostly excited and curious to see. I really had no problems with it, but like I said, the fact that so many people were caught off guard and surprised, and then once we saw really how much information and how many games they really paid attention to during that Nintendo Direct, kind of got me thinking about what's going on with Nintendo and the 3DS. So any of you guys out there who actually follow me and pay attention to the videos and follow me on Twitter, you know that part of the reason I'm a week late to this is because I was actually traveling out of town for Star Wars Celebration the week that the Nintendo Direct actually happened, and I thought that was so unfortunate. It was not great timing. I wasn't even able to watch the full Nintendo Direct itself. I just had to catch up on all the details and the release dates and all the different things that they talked about. Payday 2 randomly showing up on the Switch. I don't even know what that's about. And, now that I'm back and finally settled in after a couple of days and severely missing the Celebration convention, I felt that I wanted to get into what I was really taking away from all the information of this Nintendo Direct and the fact that they talked so much about 3DS games. And it should be noted that I really was overall excited and happy with what they shared, mostly because I am, as I like to say, probably one of the very few people out there that's extremely excited for the Pikmin game coming to the 3DS. And to get the final title and to see the release date coming July 28th, which is just a few weeks after my birthday, and it's only a few months from now, that was so exciting. I mean, we're literally going to get ARMS and Splatoon in the next couple of months for the Switch, as well as Street Fighter, by the way. I'm really excited for Street Fighter. And then, of course, right after that, we get that Pikmin game, and I'm just so pumped for that. I think it's going to be great. We're also even getting Fire Emblem Shadows of Valencia on the 3DS, so there's some great stuff coming for both of their current consoles over the course of the next few weeks and months into summer. And I'm all about that. I'm all about the 3DS love right now. But the real question is, why is Nintendo focusing so much on the 3DS? It does seem a little bit strange, doesn't it? The Switch is out. It's a big hit. Everyone's loving it. Everyone is buying it. They are impossible to find. And beyond that, the Switch really does feasibly and practically become a pseudo replacement for the 3DS, in the sense that the Switch gives us a form of portable, handheld, mobile gaming, just like what the 3DS is entirely built around. Obviously, we all know the reasons that the Switch is even better, because it doubles as a home console, and because it has like a trillion times more power and capability than the 3DS. Okay, not really a trillion, but you know what I mean. It's a very powerful next-generation home console that lets you play the same experience in handheld fashion. So the 3DS is slowly becoming less and less relevant, which makes a lot of sense. This has to happen. I'm very sad about it because I like the 3DS, but obviously this is bound to happen. Nintendo focusing so much on the 3DS right now is confusing for a lot of reasons, and I do understand people feeling weird about why focus on the 3DS. It's so outdated. The technology isn't relevant anymore. Obviously, we don't care about it anymore because the Switch lets us play games on the go and at home. Like, why even talk about the 3DS? And the real reason, you guys, that Nintendo is focusing on the 3DS, the reason they're talking about it in Nintendo Directs, and the reason they're even still releasing games and having announcements should be pretty obvious, but for anyone who hasn't figured that out yet, it's because the 3DS's install base is so incredibly massive, especially when you compare it to the Nintendo Switch. Yes, the Switch is a big hit, and it's selling like crazy, and it's going to continue to sell, and there are some talks that maybe by the end of the fiscal year, it's going to have sold over 10 million units within that first year. That's incredible, extremely successful, maybe even more. However, the 3DS right now has over 50 million units sold and out there in people's hands, in people's pockets, and in their backpacks and their purses and all these different things. So many of us have 3DSs. That is a huge market. That is a market that Nintendo cannot ignore just because their brand new console is selling so well. Even if it can act as a direct replacement to the 3DS, it's very important for Nintendo to acknowledge That's a huge market there. And we can talk about how fast the Switch is selling, and it's the fastest selling Nintendo console of all time. Maybe it's one of the fastest selling of any console of all time, which I would honestly completely believe. And that's all great, but you know what? For the Switch to really start making the kind of ground where Nintendo can expect the same kind of high volume sales for different pieces of software, it's going to take some time. Even if it sells 10 million units by the end of the year, that's still only a fraction of what the 3DS has out there currently. So what I think Nintendo is doing is biding its time, and I think this is also very smart and a very savvy business move on Nintendo that I really cannot find any fault in. And I think what they're doing is they're biding their time, like I was saying, while the Switch takes time to build up steam and sell all its consoles, and, you know, waiting for it to hit around 20 million units or so, which hopefully only takes, you know, between a year and a half to 2.5 years or so. During that time, Nintendo needs to still have access to a large amount of its demographic and its market. And right now, the vast, overwhelming majority of Nintendo gamers are gaming on their 3DS because we all have them. And even if we're not gaming on our 3DS, if Nintendo, and I'm sure that they realize this because they're a smart company, like I said, if they start to realize that, hey, we need to start creating software that we can get into more people's hands right now while the Switch is continuing to build steam and build momentum in sales, why don't we make really compelling games for the 3DS? I think that's why we might still see another Pokemon game show up on the 3DS. Yes, we're going to get that Pokemon game that's going to be on the Switch to help sell Switches more. Absolutely. I firmly believe that that is going to show up at E3 in a couple of months. I really believe that. But I think we're also going to get some other kind of Pokemon game on the 3DS. I don't know if it'll be a mainline or a spin-off game. I don't really know Pokemon well enough to say that, but I think we're going to get something else that's a big deal and a big push from Nintendo that has Pokemon in the title for the 3DS. We're getting a Fire Emblem game already. We know that that's doing huge. We're going to get some other really big Mario game beyond the dumb little sports package that just came out. We're going to get some other Mario game. We're getting Ever Oasis, which is a brand new IP. We're going to get the next entry in the Pikmin franchise, which is the first time ever on a handheld. And there's probably many more surprises and stuff they're going to show us at E3 as well, I think. And so Nintendo, I think, is really understanding while the Switch takes time to make sales, we need to have a way to reach our gamers with our software. And if we make compelling games for the 3DS that are only 3DS games, people who really want them will have to buy them on the 3DS. And luckily for Nintendo, there's 55, 60 million, however million 3DS owners out there. So, you know, they can make a game that is really interesting that we all want to buy, like a Fire Emblem or a Pokemon or a Pikmin, and that could potentially make its way to 3, 4, 5, 7 million gamers. I mean, God, if you look at what Smash Brothers did, I think Smash Brothers sold, what was it, like 7 or 8 million, I think, on the 3DS? I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'm sorry. But I know it was pretty significant. You know, it was about double what the Wii U version sold, which in and of itself sold extremely well. So at the end of the day, the very simple concept I'm trying to get across to you guys that I'm sure you all grasp is that right now, the biggest Nintendo market still exists on the 3DS. People love the machine, even if we're all more interested in focusing our attention on the much better and more superior Nintendo Switch. There's no reason for Nintendo to ignore that market, so they can slowly trickle out these Switch games, which are going to sell more and more because as they release, more Switches are being made and sold, and while that's happening, still release a couple very interesting, awesome games for the 3DS that we will still have to buy, and so many of us are going to get our hands on it. I mean, I'm picking up Fire Emblem, and I'm picking up Pikmin for the 3DS by the end of the year, and if they announce another couple great looking games, I'll pick those up. There is that Monster Hunter Stories game, which I'm a huge Monster Hunter fan. I don't quite yet know if I'm super interested in that game or not, but more than likely I'll probably give in and pick that up as well. So there you go. There's 3 games right there that even though I have a Switch and I love it to death, I'm willing to pick up on the 3DS because I have no choice. I have to pick them up on the 3DS, and that is exactly what Nintendo is banking on. And at the end of the day, even if this makes you kind of mad or upset, or you think it's just still a dumb business move for Nintendo, and just don't do that, Nintendo, just put them on the Switch anyway. To tell you the truth, I don't even mind that they're going to be 3DS games. I think they're still going to be fun. They're going to be a little bit cheaper because of that, and I'm sure that Nintendo will eventually make iterations of these games and franchises and whatnot on the Switch eventually. I don't think that this is necessarily replacing Switch games to be 3DS games. They're just creating 3DS games to fill out their library and have stuff to sell to us while the Switch builds momentum, which I've said numerous times in this video already. So that's what I think is going on, guys, and that's why I think we saw so much attention focused on the 3DS during this most recent Nintendo Direct. I think it's why there's so much information and brand new games still coming out and being made by Nintendo for the 3DS, and I think that's going to continue for at least another year until the Switch has between, I don't know, 15 and 20 or so million units sold, and I think that Nintendo's already planning for that to happen by next year, and at that point, we're probably going to actually see the waning years and months of the 3DS, and it will go away at that time. That's my personal theory, but I tell you what, man, I feel pretty good about that theory. So, what do you guys think about this? Does this make sense? Do you still enjoy your 3DS? Are you happy games are coming out for it? Or are you just completely done with it, and the Switch is so cool that you just could care less about the 3DS, and it does still frustrate you that Nintendo is focusing on the 3DS as opposed to bringing all of these games immediately to the Switch? Tell me what you guys think about all this stuff below. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, you guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.